Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can you hear me? If the sound is okay, please press 1 in the chat. Try to adjust some of the mic volume, so I just want to make sure that it sounds clear before I start and that there's not too much background noise. How is everyone doing? Good, alhamdulillah. So this post-debate analysis has been a long time coming. It's been, I think, over 2 weeks since the debate actually happened. But I've just been very busy with a number of different projects. Been really busy with MuslimSkeptic.com and really trying to take the site to the next level and just continue to improve it, make it better. So there's a lot of brothers on the team who are working really hard, and the site, alhamdulillah, continues to improve, and it's more and more people are actually coming to muslimskeptic.com on a daily basis, alhamdulillah. So we just want to increase the output, increase the quality of our articles, cover more relevant news, expand the team. So a lot of you actually donate to muslimskeptic.com, and we put 100% of that money to good use, alhamdulillah. And if you guys like muslimskeptic.com, you can always give us more feedback and help us improve every day, inshallah. Also been very busy with Al-Asna Institute. As you know, Al-Asna has online courses, content. We started this weekly halaqa, a weekly session with the students live, 2 hours every week, usually with me, but we also have guests. We've had one guest so far. Some of you might know Paul Williams of Blogging Theology. So he gave us a very nice lecture on the New Testament, and the students got to interact with him and ask him questions. So at Al-Asna Institute, if you're interested in that kind of more academic and organized study of these topics like Islam and modernism, Islam and feminism, debating and critiquing different religious beliefs and scriptures, then definitely check out Al-Asna Institute. And I think you'll like it a lot, inshallah. If you like these kinds of lives, then you'll definitely like the halaqas that we have every week. So for getting to the post-debate analysis, I just want to go over some basic points. I don't want to make this like one of these really long analyses, like 8 hours. I don't think it needs that. I don't think there's going to be much benefit in spending 8 full hours just analyzing this particular debate. But I just want to make some basic points and inshallah also answer questions and talk to you guys. So if you have any questions, just save them so that when I ask for questions and we get to the discussion portion, that I'll be able to see it, because while I'm talking, I can't simultaneously read the chat. So I'll just prompt you for questions and then we can get into it. So the topic of the debate, well, first of all, the first question that people always ask with every debate that I've had is, what is really the purpose of this debate? Like, why are you debating this topic? Why are you debating this person? Is this really necessary? It seems like a waste of time. There's always, I would say 5% to 10% of the audience, the Muslim skeptic audience, don't get it. Like, for every debate, it doesn't matter who I debate, 10% will say, well, I don't really see the point of this. And yeah, I mean, not every topic is relevant to every person. Some people think that debating with Christians is a waste of time. Others think it's absolutely necessary. Some people think, well, why debate issues like feminism? or why debate, a feminist, or why debate an atheist, or why debate a murtad? Why? Like, they don't see the purpose. That's fine. Like, if you personally don't find a topic beneficial, we can't all be interested in everything, obviously. But just to give you an idea of what my thought process was for this particular debate. So I think that debating sexual ethics and these kinds of sexual issues is very important for Muslims to do, because this is one of the areas that Islam is being attacked through this avenue by liberals, by atheists, even by Christians, and other religions. They focus on these kinds of sexual issues. So we have to be able to respond, because basically what the liberal mindset is that, look, trying to limit sexuality between consenting adults is arbitrary. Like, there's no actual practical reason to do that. Like, why would you stop two consenting adults from doing whatever they want? They consent, right? They both agree, or whoever's involved agrees. So where is the harm? What is the problem? And people who have been affected by a liberal mindset will also not be able to see and not understand, well, what is the harm, with premarital sex, with extramarital sex. And Vaush actually said this in the debate, like, what's wrong with cheating? Like, what's wrong with cheating on your spouse? So doesn't see a moral problem with it. Or homosexuality, or whatever, all of these, or pornography. What is the problem? That is their mindset. And people who have been raised in this liberal paradigm, and they have been educated by this liberal paradigm, they don't see the problem. They don't see what is really the harm. And that includes many Muslims. Many Muslims in the West, especially those who will go to college, they will have a hard time wrapping their minds around the harm of these things. Like, what is really the problem? What is immoral about it? And at most, they will just accept it in a kind of, well, Allah says, Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say that this is wrong, therefore we accept it. Blindly accept it, basically. And there's no problem as long as you accept it, but that's not the way that most Muslims in the world recognize, or understand things like zina, or understand things like liwat, or understand, pornography or whatever else. They don't have that same kind of mentality that, Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it, therefore we accept, but we don't really know, like, what's the problem. Muslims around the world who aren't indoctrinated by liberalism have a different approach, or they have a different understanding. Their understanding is like, well, this is something clearly wrong. This is something clearly, like, everyone should recognize, even if you're not Muslim, even if there wasn't, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or there wasn't the Quran and Revelation telling you that, stay away from zina. You just know, like, any people with honor, any people with dignity would recognize that these things are wrong. And there's a video that we put on the Muslim Skeptic channel, like an experiment, where we went to a couple of college campuses and we asked college students about this scenario of basically having sex with a dead chicken that you buy in the grocery store. Is that something that's morally allowed? Is that morally permissible? And pretty much all of these college students, and they're coming from different ethnic, cultural backgrounds, but they're just being educated. They're in this liberal environment. All of them said, yeah, no problem. There's no moral problem with it. It's kind of weird, but there's no problem with it. Like, there's no harm that is done to it. And you can, watch that video on our channel um, about having sex with a dead chicken, and you can see the Muslim commenters and non-Muslims as well, who are not in the liberal West, are just shocked. Like, what do you mean? Of course it's wrong. It is morally wrong. So this is the liberal indoctrination, because the majority of human beings, regardless of their background, like their religious background, regardless of their cultural background, they find certain things like this just disgusting. Like it's a biological thing. It's a human thing. Like, we are created to find certain things like this disgusting and vile, like extramarital affairs. Like, that's universal. Like, you see this across all cultures, and you will also find this in the animal kingdom. You'll find this, for example, in certain great apes, that they will be protective. They will have this thing called mate guarding. They guard their mates, and it's analogous. It's very analogous to this idea that there are certain sexual things that can't be done, even in the animal kingdom. So, I mean, this is a much larger discussion, but we have to be able to debate these topics, because the liberal attack on religion is that these restrictions on sexuality are arbitrary. They're just meant to limit people and control people against their interests, because people want to do certain things. They consent to doing these kinds of sexual acts. So if you prevent them from doing what they want to do, that is oppression. That's persecution, actually. And so these religions are persecuting people. They're arbitrarily restricting free choice. And the worst offender is Islam, because Islam has the most restrictions, seemingly, compared to these other religions. So Islam is target number one. Islam is public enemy number one. We have to be able to debate this issue and discuss this issue. So that's the reasoning behind why this topic is important. Why this guy, though? Why Vaush? Why should we debate Vaush? Well, he's one of the most popular debaters on YouTube. And YouTube is arguably the biggest social media platform in the world, especially for youth. It's even more popular than something like TikTok or Instagram. So YouTube these debates are happening. You have Vaush is one of these well-known debaters. He's basically like Destiny Jr. Like, Destiny is one of the bigger debaters as well on YouTube, and Vaush is like mini Destiny. And obviously I debated Destiny as well, and there's a lot of commonalities when it comes to their debate tactics, which we'll talk about. But yeah, so that's the reason. So when you want to debate, it's important to debate like some of these people who are known for debate, and if they're up for it, then why not? Why not? Especially when you have like a game plan, you know what you want to argue, you have done your preparation, you've consulted people to make sure that you're prepared and that you are going to do your best because of your preparation, inshallah. So then why not? Like, why wouldn't you want to debate the people who are considered the top debaters and people who are very hostile to Islam? I think it became very clear throughout this debate how hostile this guy is towards Islam. And all of these liberals, like the most hostile people to Islam, you might think are people like David Wood or these kinds of Christian apologists. But arguably, I think the kind of nonsense that Vaush was saying about Islam is as offensive and as misguided and irrational as anything that David Wood has said. Or even Destiny, if you remember. Destiny was putting out all of this kind of Islamophobic sound bites critiquing Islam. And there's a reason that they do that, by the way. that's one of their tactics that we'll talk about. But they, these liberals, they want to pretend like they're so open-minded. They just love immigrants. They just love refugees. They're all about, open society and accepting people regardless of their differences. It's all big one. The world is one big village, and we have to hold hands and sing kumbaya. That's their message, on the left, and on the right too. Some of these conservatives also, but when it actually comes to their actual beliefs and what they privately think about Islam, you can see how rabidly anti-Muslim, anti-Islam they are. They're extremely anti-Islam. So this really, shows the lie of, oh, we have to ally with the left because they're so tolerant. They're not tolerant at all. They're of the debates that I've had, I was most shocked by the level of animosity towards Islam by the more liberal people like Destiny, like Vaush. So like some of the things that Vaush was saying, like Muslims just, their societies are full of rape, and their societies are all about beating women to a pulp and oppressing women. And these are all like neocon talking points, like Zionist neocon talking points against Islam. So that, I think, is a interesting thing that came out of this debate. But yeah, so the whole point of debate at all, as I've explained before on some of these post-debate analyses, that it's a form of dawah. So when you have someone like Vaush, he has a very large audience, and that audience is just like him. A significant amount of his audience is thinking exactly the same way, that Islam is, basically this oppressive, totalitarian, destructive force. Muslims are these barbaric savages, these evil monsters. Like that's what he thinks, and that's what his audience thinks. The only kind of Muslims that they tolerate are liberal Muslims, Muslims who abandon key parts of Islam that conflict with liberalism. So they only accept, Muslims who have abandoned Islam. So when you have that kind of audience and you have the opportunity to debate, because he's not just going to invite me. Vaush is not going to just invite a Muslim on his platform to, talk about Islam and like an interview style. He's not going to do that. Or Destiny is not going to do that. Maybe, but we haven't seen it. We see them invite non-Muslims and to talk about Islam, and we see them invite Murtadeen, ex-Muslims, quote unquote, to talk about Islam. But they don't bring a traditional Orthodox Muslim to have a platform to talk about Islam in a clear and open way to their audience. So then how do you reach that audience? How do you reach those people for the purpose of showing, hey, look, Islam is actually very rational. All of these things that you consider to be irrational, they're very rational, they're very reasonable, and they make a lot more sense than what you believe, your ideology, your worldview. So that's a powerful opportunity for dawah. And I my belief is that this is a productive way to do dawah. Obviously, many people in that audience are just like Vaush, and they're not going to accept anything that you say. That's fine. But a percentage of that audience is going to, see a side of Islam or a Muslim that they haven't really been exposed to before. They haven't seen it before. And they'll definitely get an argument or a line of argumentation that they haven't probably ever seen before. And I think that can be beneficial. That can be a beneficial way of calling to Islam. and presenting Islam in a positive light. So that actually, that goes into the way that I will act, or the way that I will speak or interact with the interlocutor, with the opponent in a debate. Because, this is under the topic of optics management. And I've talked about this before, that managing the optics of the debate is extremely important. You can win a debate or lose a debate on the basis of optics, on the basis of how things look. You can have like a really solid argument, like a really good argument for your position, but because of the way that you act, like if you act like very arrogantly, or you act in a very rude way, or you act in a very immature way, or you just look like you are condescending, you can lose the debate. You can lose the debate despite having the better argument. And vice versa. You can have a very weak argument, but because you just look better than the opponent in different ways, like you're just very polite, you seem laid back in a good way, like you're not like over, like you're not nervous, you're not projecting this kind of nervousness, or you're not projecting this lack of confidence, you can win a debate. You can win a debate despite having the poor argument. So optics management is very important, but it's easy to say, it's hard to do, because when you're in the moment and you're in that situation with someone, they're trying to goad you. They're trying to trigger you, basically. If it's a experienced debater, they want to trigger you to drop a facade and basically show that you're unhinged, or you're rude, or you're this or that. Like that's what they want to do in order to win the debate, because they can't beat you on the argument side, so they have to resort to these kinds of tactics. So sometimes it's necessary to be to reciprocate. If they're being rude, your opponent is being rude and aggressive, and you reciprocate. Sometimes that's appropriate. Sometimes it's strategic not to reciprocate. They're rude, and they're using this kind of vulgar language, and they're being offensive as possible. They're like interrupting you, cutting you off, and you don't reciprocate. You kill them with kindness, basically. That can be very strategic. So you have to kind of gauge the situation and also see how the audience reacts. Sometimes you can see that in real time if you look at the chat. So that's optics management is part of the strategy. Knowing when to respond in kind, knowing when to reciprocate and when to hold back. And you try your best. Sometimes you can make a mistake. Sometimes you can hit the nail on the head. So, like for example, the debate with that atheist guy that I had recently, he was extremely arrogant, extremely rude, and he came out guns blazing in that kind of way. So I responded in that way because the thought process with that atheist T jump is that this guy is, if you do your research, you can see like what the audience of this guy is like. Does he have an audience? Like how popular is he? How well liked is he? This guy is universally hated. T jump is universally hated. Everyone says that he's this kind of really rude, arrogant person who is also a bad debater. Like he has all these problems. So okay, like he's not going to be seen as a sympathetic person, and he's acting like in such an arrogant way. So let him have a taste of his own medicine. But with Vaush's audience, Vaush, for example, has maybe like 100 times the audience that T Jump has. And Vaush is also, people are watching him who have not seen a debate with a Muslim. They have not seen Vaush debate a Muslim before. I don't think he's ever debated a Muslim. So this is their first, this could, for some of them, be their first exposure to a Muslim, an Orthodox traditional Muslim, for an extended period of time, because it's going to be like a 2 or 3 hour debate. Whereas T-Jump, every week he's debating Muslims on some whatever topic. So, I mean, these are the kinds of considerations. Maybe with that audience, with Vaush, coming off guns blazing and reciprocating all of his insults, and like, that's going to not be the best situation. That's not going to have the best outcome. Allahu A'lam, maybe I'm wrong. Like I said, this is something that you just have to figure out and decide in the moment, or you have a game plan before going into the debate, and then sometimes your strategy has to change, because I had no clue that he was going to be so rude. I didn't have a clue that T-Jump was going to be so rude. I tried to think that, why would you go into a debate being rude? Why would why are you trying to instigate a kind of mudslinging match? Wouldn't it be better to have like a straight up debate? But this is one of their tactics. Like, when they don't have any clue how to respond to the argument, when you don't have a clue to how to respond to the opening statement and you're just overwhelmed, then you're going to try your best to derail the whole conversation. You want to make it into a mudslinging match, or a mud wrestling. You want to get down and dirty. That's like a tactic to derail the whole debate, to obfuscate the fact that you don't understand how to respond to the opening statement. So I think that happened with Vaush for sure. Like, he was very rude, and that kind of surprised me from the get-go. Like, he even interrupted my opening statement, which is unheard of. Like, there's an opening statement that someone is making, and then you interrupt to ask for a time check, and that's never happened before. I've also never seen that happen before. But I think he was just like realizing he was in over his head, so he wanted to throw a wrench into the situation. So that's the thing about Vaush. He's an experienced debater. That's his whole job. Like, he's a professional debater. So that's he knows all of these kinds of tactics. What else? So about the topic itself, like, again, I tried to explain what's the reason for going into this debate on that particular topic of is pornography bad for society. This is something that Muslims know. We know it very clearly, that pornography is bad for society. It's something intuitive. And so many people were saying, like, what's the purpose of having this debate at all on such a topic? And like I said, it's intuitive for most Muslims. And we know, like, in the Quran, in Surah Nur, Allah says, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يُغَضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ. So tell the believing men to lower their gaze. Okay, or sometimes it's translated as tell the believing Muslims, men, to reduce their vision. And guard their private parts. So this is something that is established in Islam, and I haven't done full research on this, but I don't think that they have this same kind of value in other religions, like to the same extent. There's obviously veiling in other religions. So when you veil, you are basically limiting the vision of others to see your body, to see the bodies of women, through the practice of veiling, through the practice of gender separation. These things are actually universal. They're pretty much universal across religions. It's only liberalism and modernism that has slowly eroded these practices. and that's why we see so many problems in society. But the emphasis to also tell men or believers to lower their gaze, this is something that, to that extent, I don't think we see in other religions. So I think Islam actually, uh, this is something that is unique about Islam, and it makes Islam uniquely opposed to pornography, um, as opposed to these other religions that don't have the same kind of emphasis on lowering the gaze or reducing vision. They might, some of these religions may address the problem, like the traditional versions of these religions, like Orthodox Christianity, for example, where they might address part of the issue by telling people to veil, and maybe they have gender segregation as well, like like Orthodox Jews. Orthodox Jewish women also cover their hair, or they wear wigs to cover their natural hair. They also separate. They're not in the same. They're not supposed to mix. Like Hasidic Jews, for example. So that's one side of the equation, and then the other side of the equation of being very strict about lowering the gaze, reducing your vision. Again, I could be wrong. I'm not aware of the same level of teaching in these other religions. Even though these other religions, all, I would imagine they are, many of them, especially the Orthodox versions, they're opposed to pornography as well. So, but what is the basis for that in Islam? We know that we have to lower the gaze. There's also a very interesting hadith that is reported from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this hadith, the glance is a poisoned arrow of shaitan. Whoever lowers his gaze for Allah, Allah will bestow upon him a refreshing sweetness, which he will find in his heart on the day he meets Allah. So this is a hadith that has been related in many different works related to the virtues of lowering the gaze and the importance of lowering the gaze. And this hadith is very profound. The idea that the glance, the unrestrained glance, looking at what you're not supposed to look at, is a poisoned arrow. And I had one of my teachers explain this many years ago, that what this indicates is that when you're hit with a poisoned arrow, obviously you are wounded by the arrow that hits you. But the fact that it's poisoned means that even after you pull out the arrow and you cauterize the wounds, like you dress and treat the wound, but the poison is still in you. The poison has gotten into your body. And this is, very apt when it comes to pornography or just any kind of lewdness, nudity in society. The poison is something that can dwell in the body, and then the poison just increases until what happens? Until the heart dies. This is very scary. And the refreshing sweetness, this kind of sweetness that you attain by lowering the gaze, by preventing your eyes consuming this kind of filth, it allows you to have a kind of sweetness in your heart and a light in your heart, and Allah is going to reward that. Allah is going to reward that in this life and the next, because something that is sweet, is something that you enjoy. Like, you get enjoyment, you get a kind of ease and pleasure from avoiding something that is haram. For the sake of Allah, you're doing it for the sake of Allah, then this is something that Allah will reward it, and you'll experience the sweetness of it in life as well. And the opposite is the poisoning of your body, the poisoning of your mind, the poisoning of your heart, and that's going to cause spiritual death. So, subhanAllah. So these things are all important. This is Muslims know all of this. Christians also recognize a lot of this. They recognize the problems with pornography. It seems like a lot of Christians are catching up on this issue, though, because when you look at Protestant and Catholic tradition or Christians today, I don't see the same emphasis with veiling. Obviously, they've discarded the veil completely. The gender mixing, men and women being together. They've also gotten rid of the idea of premarital sex being like a huge violation against God, a sin against God. Many of these Christian groups have gotten rid of such an important thing, like the basics of sexual ethics, let alone pornography. There's so it's good though to see online, like you see on the Muslim Skeptic channel. If you go to modern day debates, a lot of the commentary from modern day debates viewers is from Christians, and the Christians agree with the Muslim in that debate. But it's good to see Christians kind of stepping up their game and realizing that, yeah, pornography is a huge problem. And my message to any Christians who are watching this is, well, that's the first step. Pornography, that's the first step. It's good that you recognize that this is an evil, but consider like things like veiling, consider things like separating the genders, consider things like, hey, it's a problem to have men and women like being casually friends with each other who are not married and are not family. This is something that is dangerous. This is something that leads to all kinds of, what's the word for fahisha or fitna? This is something that is a tribulation. It is something that is a perversion. So Christians, if you recognize the evil of pornography, just logically follow through with that thought process. And then you will, you'll gain more of an appreciation for Islam and the rules in Islam, hopefully. But even if you don't, want to become Muslim and convert to Islam, at least you can, protect, your own family, yourself. You can recognize, and some of these things you'll find within your own tradition. So be aware of that. Like revive your own religious tradition, and Muslims will benefit from that as well. For Christians to start, practicing or reviving their sexual ethics, and Christian societies becoming more conservative in the sense that they don't have this kind of slide towards liberalization and sexual promiscuity. Muslims will benefit from that. Christians will benefit from that. Society will benefit from that. So that's my message to Christians. Okay, so other points that I wanted to make about the debate itself. So I think that most people clearly recognize that Vaush was resorting to vulgarity and obscenities. And someone commented actually that this is Vaush doesn't usually do this. Vaush doesn't usually get into this level of obscenity, and he doesn't get into this level of rudeness unless he's like losing or he feels cornered. He feels cornered in the debate, so then he has to resort to this kind of language. And this is a tactic, right? Whenever there are Muslims or even Christians debating an atheist or a liberal person, then this is a tactic to make the other side, to make the religious person uncomfortable, to make the religious person feel unbalanced or upset or angry. He's basically trying to poke and prod and instigate. in order to derail the debate. And this is a common tactic whenever Muslims or Christians are in a debate with someone who is unscrupulous, like Vaush or others. They can't win the debate straight up, so they resort to this kind of language. But like I said, it would be a mistake. Like if they're trying to provoke, don't be provoked. Like stick with the game plan, stick with the evidence, the reasoning, the logic, and you'll win the debate. Another thing that we find from these liberals, like Vaush, is that this is why Vaush is like mini Destiny, because I think Destiny, who is also one of these top debaters on YouTube, have perfected this tactic of when they don't know the topic, or they haven't researched it, they haven't prepared like a very clear argument in favor of the position that they're debating, or they are thrown off by the opening statement or the argument of the opponent. They are very good at just talking, and they have certain talking points that they go to. So if they're debating someone who is, making empirical claims or making claims about the world, they will always go to this point of, where are the studies? Show me the studies that prove what you're saying. Like, show me the research, the peer-reviewed academic research. So that's a go-to, and then they'll kind of go at length to emphasize how the opponent is not grounded in empirical studies. He's not grounded in research. He's just, this ideologue who is spouting off on the basis of bias or whatever. So this is what Vaush did in another debate he had with a Christian Catholic, E. Michael Jones. They also had a debate on modern day debates on pornography, the same exact topic. And Vaush kept emphasizing this against E. Michael Jones. Like, you don't have any data, you don't have any evidence, you don't have anything to back up your points. And E. Michael Jones did it. Like, E. Michael Jones wasn't using that as a strategy to actually go to studies and point out some of the harms of pornography usage, which is not a problem. He just had a different strategy. But that's the tactic that Vaush used to respond. But then if you do bring the evidence, if you do bring the data, you do bring the peer-reviewed papers. And for this debate, I read through and gathered dozens of studies on pornography usage and the harms that it brings. And the argument I made was a very simple argument that everyone can understand and accept. Pornography is this super stimulus that detracts people from, that destroys people's sex drive, destroys people's willingness to get married, destroys people's drive to find a partner to marry and have children with. It makes marriages unstable. It is actually a factor in the destruction of the nuclear family. And this has a huge effect on society. This has a huge effect, detrimental effect on society. It's a very simple argument, and each point of the argument is backed up with countless studies. Like, this is something that is unobjectionable, uncontroversial within the actual field. So, which is amazing, actually, that you can have this idea that, well, pornography is something that is very harmful and detrimental. That is something that's uncontroversial within the literature, despite the fact that academia is extremely liberal. Academia is extremely liberal, and that liberal bias prevents certain kinds of research from being done. But despite that liberal bias, you still see, an overwhelming amount of evidence showing the negative outcomes associated with pornography usage for the person's mental health, for their social well-being, for their ability to form connections with other people in society. So that research is just overwhelming despite the liberal bias. But what is the tactic of someone like Vaush or Destiny? So if the opponent does bring studies, they will do one of two things. They will say, oh, correlation does not imply causation, which this is actually what Vaush did. This is a really stupid stupid response, but it's effective because it sounds like it's a good response. It's to someone who doesn't understand what scientific research is. It'll sound like, oh, okay, yeah, correlation doesn't imply causation, right? So if I bring a group of people who are pornography consumers or coomers, and then you bring a group that is, has all of these mental problems like depression and loneliness and maybe some kind of personality disorders, and you see a high correlation, people who are using pornography 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, 10 hours a week, and they also happen to have these kind of psychological disorders. Oh, well, that doesn't prove that pornography caused the mental dysfunction. Maybe the mental dysfunction caused them to be bigger consumers of pornography. See, it could go both ways. So this is the type of response that it sounds like, oh yeah, that's true, because it is true. Correlation doesn't imply or doesn't mean causation. But correlation does imply, it is evidence of causation. It might not be definitive evidence of causation or irrefutable evidence of causation, but it is evidence of causation. And that's what all of science is based off of. You could have any number of correlated things and say that, oh, well, correlation does not imply causation. Like, for example, if we want to see like a certain medicine, does this medicine cause cancer? So we see, well, these are people who all, took the medicine, and the people who took the medicine, as opposed to those who didn't, have a higher correlation with this particular cancer. That's a correlation. Is that causation? Well, that's the question that the research is trying to answer. And that's why there are certain confidence intervals. Like if the correlation is at a certain statistical rate, and you do all kinds of regressions, mathematical statistical regressions to determine that, if the p-value is a certain number, then okay, then this is significant. They're significantly correlated in the sense that there is strong evidence for actual causation. So that's all scientific research. All scientific research can only show correlation, but to decide that, okay, this is actual causal, this is a causal phenomenon, we are seeing cause and effect, you need more. You need more, and that's where theoretical disciplines come into place. Like when it comes to medicine and disease, well, you have to have a certain understanding, like a certain theory about physiology. You have to have a certain theory about the human body and how the human body processes chemicals, and how the human body creates cancer, and how the human body, the metabolism of the human body, the hormonal system of the human body. All of this background knowledge has to be there. And then on the basis of that theory, you can take certain data and certain correlations and say, yes, this is very likely, it's a causal phenomenon. Taking this drug and it causes cancer. That's how you go from these studies to getting a causal picture. That's something like that bigger theoretical framework is not found in one study. That's something that you have to have many studies for, and then it becomes consensus, and it's actually put in textbooks and it's taught in universities, and that's how something becomes scientific consensus. And then you have an entire paradigm, and then within that paradigm, then you understand, okay, this piece of research, this research study, and those research studies are only showing correlation, but with a certain confidence level, and this background information, this background theory this background paradigm, then you have a causal story that is considered to be empirical and scientific. So that's a lot of philosophy of science. But the thing about this debate, and I made this point, is that there is a causal story that we can give. We can give that causal picture of how pornography is negatively impacting marriage. So it's not just correlation. Yeah, you have this correlation, but the background theory is also very clear to understand. The difference between sexual release through pornography and masturbation versus sexual release through a relationship with a person. There's all kinds of chemical things that are happening in the body that are very different between one situation and another. So oxytocin is one of the very important hormones that is released upon ejaculation, for example, or orgasm for either men or women. And oxytocin, in combination with skin-to-skin contact, creates a bond. This is something that has been studied at length. And this particular hormone is very important for creating a sense of love, loyalty, mercy, compassion through this particular hormone. So you can't get that through masturbation. You can't get that feeling of connection. So that means that if you are destroying your sex drive because you're constantly using pornography and you're addicted to it, and you're addicted to it because that's the nature of it, it's a super stimulus, as I explained in the debate, then it's going to prevent you from seeking those kinds of connections with people and those kinds of relationships of marriage. And you're going to have a less sex drive that will prevent you from having a strong relationship with your spouse. And also, you're not going to be motivated to have children, on and on. The whole causal picture, you can present that. So, yeah, so this is one of the tactics of, causation doesn't imply, correlation doesn't imply causation. It just sounds like, yeah, this is an actual fallacy. Correlation does not mean causation, but it is evidence of causation. So, super chat from brother Daniel. He says, I sincerely appreciate the effort you make in order to debunk liberalism. I love watching your debates and post-debate analysis. May Allah bless you and your family. Ameen. Jazakallah khairah. Brother Daniel, great name, by the way, mashallah. So another tactic that a lot of these guys use, and again, you'll see this with the liberal debaters. So you see it somewhat with Christians as well, but with all the three debates I had with liberal non-Muslims, they all use this. So randomly in the middle of the debate, suddenly they want to talk about homosexuality. Suddenly, like, it's not related to the debate. So Destiny, for example, brought up gay, that hudud regarding gay sex. Mr. Girl also started bringing up that topic. And then Vaush also talked about gay adoption. Like, what do you think about gay adoption? So now I've recognized this pattern that this is just a way for them to derail the debate. They're just trying to curry favor with their liberal audience, and they want to, make the debate about every aspect of Islam that is not liberal. So this is a derailing tactic. And in the past, I would have this kind of approach of, well, this is something that is not a problem to address. Here's the answer. You want to talk about homosexuality and what Islam has to say about that? Here's the answer. Let's talk about it. But now I realize that no, even if you give a response, you're still derailing from the topic. Like, you're basically putting the opponent in a position of strength where now they can put you on the back foot. They've been on the back foot because you've done your homework, you've given a great opening statement. Now they are on the back foot, but they want to shift the momentum by throwing out, oh, gay adoption, oh, homosexuality, oh, child marriage. It's not related to the debate. So this is my new strategy is, look, and this should be a standard for any debate. The debate is on this topic. We want to address this topic. If you bring in an unrelated thing, no problem. That's worth debating as well. And we're happy to debate that other topic. If you're interested, plenty of videos I have addressing that topic. We can schedule a debate for that topic. But right now, you're trying to derail a debate, and we want to stick to the topic. So that's the best approach now, I realize, to these liberals, that they're going to inevitably try to derail the debate because they're not prepared for the debate, and they're thrown off by the arguments. Because that's the thing about these liberals, they feel, I mean, they have the home court advantage. They are dealing with an audience that is liberal. Like, the mentality of people is liberal, including Muslims. So given that mentality, they want to they kind of have this sense of calm, or this sense of like, oh, well, I'm not gonna have trouble, like this is gonna be easy. Obviously, no, everyone knows that Islam is irrational. Everyone knows that Islam is, barbaric, and liberalism. They might not have the concept of liberalism in their mind, but they feel that their liberal positions about freedom and equality are just so strong and so rational that you don't need to prepare. For that. So they do have the home court advantage, and that puts the Muslim debater in a weaker position, and that's why it's so important to prepare. It's important to have these kinds of tactics in mind so that you're ready to address them, and that you anticipate all of their responses. And that's what I did. So, like, I had a whole document prepared with his possible counters. So let's see. I anticipated 21 different things that he could have said in response. So let's see. I'll just share some of these with you. He could have said, yeah, your studies say this, but other studies say something else. So that's one tactic he could have brought. He could have said, well, there are some studies that say that pornography is just a healthy thing. And I think he cited one study. He just randomly Googled it, and he was able to find one thing that he just read part of it. And that was it. For all of my studies that I cited, the dozens of studies that I referenced or alluded to, those are nonsense. He just hand waved and said, no, those don't mean anything. It's just correlation equals causation fallacy. But he found one study. But the reality is the majority of studies say that this is something detrimental to people. Pornography usage is something that is highly addictive. It is something that changes the brain. It's something that will make, even with one use, with one use is enough to get you hooked. And that's the thing that they realize, like socially, like the average age that children are exposed to pornography is 10 years old. Every year it goes lower and lower. So that's the average is 10. So that means there's a lot of children that are exposed to pornography earlier than 10 years old. And at first, children are very shocked by what they're seeing, according to this research. But it spurs a kind of curiosity where they want to look for more and they want to see more. Even they haven't hit puberty yet. They haven't hit puberty, but it's a stimulus that gets the children to want to see more and more and more. And that's how they become addicted. And the effect of pornography on an adolescent brain is far worse, or is far greater in its impact to the brain than an adult, because there's this plasticity of the brain when the brain is developing. So this is essentially like you have, a needle of heroin, and you're randomly going and you're injecting children with heroin, and you think that that's a good thing. Like, that's basically what pornography accessibility is. And the thing about pornography also is, like, how are we defining pornography? Because if we define it as just like visual nudity, then that's not limited to the internet. That's something that is used in TV, it's used in movies, it's used in advertisements, and it's prolific. This is Society has been inundated with all of this trash, all of this nudity. So children are exposed and they are put onto this pipeline of becoming these addicts, these Coomer addicts. So it's extremely damaging. Other responses or possible counters that he could have brought up. Censoring art is dangerous. Like censoring. So that's the other thing about this debate. He wanted to make it about a censorship debate. And I kept telling him over and over that, look, this is not the topic of the debate. How to censor pornography. Is it possible to censor it? Is it good or bad to censor it? So that's like a libertarian type of debate about censorship. And that's not the debate topic. The debate topic is about, is this something bad? And he said, at one point in the debate, he said that, well, we can never figure out if it's bad or not. So that's the whole debate topic. That's literally the title of the debate. And he said that, well, that's not something that we can figure out or we can ever determine. But he just wanted to make it into a libertarian debate about censorship, and his argument was stupid. Like, oh, it's impossible. How can we ever ban pornography? Pornography has always existed. So he kept using these fallacies, which I addressed because I anticipated him to bring them up, but he would not acknowledge that. He would not acknowledge my responses. Like, no, pornography has not always existed, because this is, if you just mean like drawings are not the same as pornography. Drawings can be lewd, drawings can be erotic, but that's not the same thing as pornography. Why? Because pornography is a super stimulus. It is imitating the real thing in a way that a drawing cannot imitate a real thing. And there is a quote by Naomi Wolf, who is a feminist, that I didn't get a chance to read in the debate. But Naomi Wolf said that basically pornography has created a situation where naked women are now like inferior pornography. Like, pornography is more arousing and more attractive than actual women. That's what a super stimulus is. So that has not been possible prior to the technology, the photo technology, the video camera technology. Now there's like virtual reality pornography. So that technology is creating something that is unique in history. And the idea that pornography cannot be censored is ridiculous, because obviously child pornography is made illegal. It is censored. Social media platforms and the internet has no problem completely banning pornography and doing a really good job of preventing child pornography from spreading. So yes, it exists, but it's curbed to such an extent that people are being put in prison for it. And Vaush had no problem with any of those kinds of restrictions. Vaush has no problem with, or he doesn't question whether it's difficult to ban child pornography, but somehow other kinds of pornography cannot be banned. So that makes no sense. So, yeah. So, 21 different responses or counters to his counters. So, okay. What else should we talk about? I would like to actually do a full course for Alesna on pornography, because there's a lot of good research that Muslims should be aware of. I think that pornography is one of the big tools of liberalism to secularize society. Porn actually does have an effect on religiosity. Like, it literally can affect, this has been shown empirically. Again, I refer to hadith about how the unrestricted glance is a poisoned arrow. But the empirical studies also show that pornography usage can secularize you. Like, people start using pornography and they have less belief in God, or they attend church less, or they pray less. So anyway, so some people are saying that Apus is in the chat. So okay, hi Apus. Hope you're enjoying the live stream, taking notes. So anyway, yeah, this is, so it's a good debate for Muslims to have. It's a good debate or general topic about sexual liberation, and it's an easy type of debate to have. Like, the arguments are very easy to understand. You just tie it back to marriage, you tie it back to family, you tie it back to society, and even someone who is not religious can understand. They can understand like this type of argumentation. So we should be putting liberals on the back foot. Put liberals on the back foot and get them to defend their practices, their sexual immorality. Let them try to defend it, and then you be the aggressor. You can bring up all of these points. You can use the same scientific studies that are constantly talking about how important science is and how important evidence is. Yeah, bring up all of the science, bring up all the evidence, and you can easily win all of these kinds of debates. So, also, I mean, the other point that we didn't really get to in the debate is how much pornography is basically preventing people from lashing out in society. Pornography is basically this release valve, because such a large percentage of youth cannot get married. Such a large percentage of youth cannot get married and have children and have a stable household and family. This is the whole incel phenomenon. They want to get married. They want to have even a girlfriend, like non-Muslims. They want to have a girlfriend, but they're just not able to. Why is that? You know, we have talked about it before in previous lives. Basically, sexual freedom and the sexual revolution that legalized all kinds of fornication. This has been a disaster for everyone, for all of society, but especially men. Because if you couple that with constantly telling women that, hey, you need to get educated, you need to go into a career path, you need to like focus on that, not marriage, don't get married. Well, what is the problem with that is that women will just have zina. They'll just fornicate while they're in the university, while they're working on their career. They don't want to get married. They don't want to have children. That's all going to prevent them from having this fulfilling career. That's the problem. So men wanting to get married, they can't find someone to get married. And they also aren't able to have this same kind of casual sex that women have. Women have no problem finding a sexual partner. Men, it's much more difficult. And this is a very basic common sense reality. But if you don't believe me, then just look at like Tinder. So there were some stats on Tinder, like how easy it is for a man to match up with someone on Tinder versus how easy it is for women to match up. And it's not even close. Like women there's always someone who is willing to sleep with a woman. But for men, no, women are very selective. Only the top 10% of men can find a person to sleep with, and they just cycle through a long list of women. So that's the difference, where 40% of men in their 30s are still virgins. So 40%. Even on secular standards, this should be shocking, that you're in your 30s and you're still a virgin. Like, you haven't, that's not normal. That's not natural. The human body is not, designed to live like that. But that's the situation that liberalism creates. That's the situation that freedom and equality creates. So this is another big argument against sexual liberation. So you have 40% of men who are in their 30s. They're still virgins. Usually, if there wasn't this outlet for men, arguably they would be very dissatisfied, and maybe they would lash out. They would lash out and they would try to change the situation. I mean, this is something that is also known, is that most crime in society is committed by unmarried men who don't have any family to take care of. The vast majority of crime in society is caused by them. So I can just see like an atheist arguing that, oh, well, this shows you how pornography is great, because these men who would commit crimes are, now sitting at home masturbating to pornography. So that's a good thing. Pornography actually decreases potential crime rate. That's the argument that they could make. But that's like, okay, well, you can also reduce the crime rate if you inject people with a non-aggression serum, or you reduce their testosterone. Those are also ways that you can reduce the crime rate, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing. That doesn't mean that that's a situation that we want to promote. So yeah, so pornography is this kind of release valve that keeps the society dormant, or keeps society docile. This is actually the argument that E. Michael Jones does make in his work. Like, he views pornography and just promiscuity and sexuality as a form of control that the governments use to control their population, totalitarian governments use to control their population. So I think that there is merit to that argument for sure. And we know, like, that's shaitan, like that's Satan's method. Like, Satan's method for controlling human beings is to constantly tell them to follow their desires. So you follow your desires, and shaitan will eventually control you, because you've constantly conceded, you've constantly obeyed him and followed your desires until he controls you. Actually, there's an ayah in the Quran that refers to this. I don't have the reference on me. Can someone in the chat actually find that, if you know what I'm referring to, which ayah? So, yeah, that's the means of shaitan to control humanity. And you have these satanic governments who are using pornography to control their population and keep the population docile, so that people will not fight back, or they'll not rise up. And obviously, I'm not advocating any kind of violence. Rise up, meaning, go to the polls and vote for better candidates. So pornography prevents that. Drug addiction prevents that, and get people, addicted to narcotics, get people to be smoking weed. Weed obviously will take away a lot of motivation that people have. Like, that's the effect of weed on the brain. So you can keep the population nice and docile. Okay, so now I've talked for over an hour, almost an hour and 15 minutes. So then the remaining time, let's just have Q&A, inshallah. Any points? So just if you have a question that you want me to address, just put Muslim skeptic the channel so it'll pop up for me. So that's not exactly the ayah. Have you seen, O Prophet, the one who has taken their own desires as their God? Will you then be a keeper over them? So that's not exactly the ayah that I had in mind. It's like more direct about shaitan controlling people, having control over people. So this brother Daniel, while you guide one, the machine liberalizes thousands. While I appreciate your work, my critique to you is focus on the root cause. What is the correct approach to establish the khilafah? Yeah, I mean, I don't understand this kind of response. Like, what is the root cause of the problems that we have today? The root cause is lack of iman. That's the root cause, not lack of khilafah. When you have iman, that leads to khilafah. That leads to people who want khilafah. So you have to address the loss of iman. That's actually that is the root cause. And you can talk about khilafah, you can talk about iman, you can talk about tawheed, you can talk about the sharia, you can talk about fiqh, you can talk about aqidah, you can talk about tazkiyah. All of these topics are worth talking about, and they're all interconnected. So constantly telling people, oh, you're not focusing on khilafah. Like, what if Muslims don't want khilafah? What if many Muslims don't want khilafah? Well, how do you address that? You can't address that by telling them want khilafah. You can't input that desire into them if they don't have the willingness to accept that. You have to create a situation where they will accept the importance of khilafah. And then you explain it to them. So I have many times dedicated articles and videos to the importance of khilafah. It is very important, but to comment on every single post, like literally every single post, every single video, like, oh, why aren't you talking about khilafah? That really makes no sense. Yeah, this guy is just spamming the comments. No, not that. Yeah. It's so small, I can't see. I can't read the type. Which surah is this? No, this is not the ayah that I'm talking about either. This is about changing the creation of Allah. So that's not exactly it. This is about shaitan not just changing the creation, but controlling people. No, not this ayah in Surah An-Nisa. But that's part of like changing the creation of Allah. That is one of shaitan's tactics. But this is what I'm referring to is something different. Yeah. So this is shaitan talking about how he'll mislead humanity in Surah An-Nisa, verse 119. Here's the translation. So this is shaitan commanding certain things, but I don't know what, I wish I remembered the exact ayah. Khalid is texting me with a possibility. Surah Al-A'raf, verse 20. Let me check. No, not this. But Satan whispered to them to make apparent to them that which was concealed from them of their private parts. He said, your Lord did not forbid you this tree except that you become angels or become of the immortal. No, that's not it. So, Daniel, are you aware of the 2002 Palestinian invasion by Israel where they got control of Palestinian TV network and put on pornography on all channels? An insidious ploy. Yeah, we have a Muslim Skeptic article on that actually. So if you go to Muslim Skeptic, here I'll share my screen. 1 second. Michael Jones used this in his argumentation. So how do I share StreamYard? So this was when Palestinian residents of the besieged West Bank town of Ramallah turned on their TVs over the weekend. What they encountered was neither news nor any of the usual Palestinian Authority programming. They encountered pornographic movie clips. 3 of the 4 TV stations in Ramallah, headquarters of Yasser Arafat, had been occupied by Israeli troops. The town's remaining TV station was meanwhile running a crawl at the bottom of the screen, explaining that the porn clips were the work of the occupying forces. Israeli forces had the option of taking the TV stations off the air entirely. Instead, they left them on operating, but broadcasting replacement imagery. The pornography may well have been even more demoralizing than no programming at all. So, yeah, you can read the details on this Muslim Skeptic article. So you said that this guy named Shin says, you said that men need to get married, but in traditional ideal Muslim society, most men will be left out because of polygamy. What's your answer to this? No, that's not true. Like polygamy in polygamous societies, if you look at resources like the Ethnographic Atlas and other sources, in polygamous societies, like Muslim societies, the average percentage of men who actually have more than one wife is only 5%. So it's actually a small percentage of men who will have multiple wives. But the thing is that within every society, you will have more adult women than adult men. And this is because men have a shorter life expectancy than women. And also, men are the ones who will be engaged in war and who will actually go into battle. So just in general, most societies, you'll have a surplus of women. So if you don't practice polygamy, actually, then a lot of those women will not be able to find a spouse. Polygamy does not actually reduce the possibility for the majority of men finding a spouse. So this is like just a incorrect argument against polygamy. Why can't comments be made in replies on the Telegram group? So he's talking about my Telegram channel. If you're not on Telegram, be sure to get on Telegram and get on the channel. But no, why do you need comments in Telegram on Telegram? Like, you can comment on YouTube, you can comment on Facebook, you can comment on muslimskeptic.com. Like, comments, put your comments there. Like, you don't need to put comments on Telegram. And, just let there be one place where I don't have to go through comments and see some of this nonsense that people are posting. No, this is not the ayah. No, it's not. It's not. This is not the verse that I'm referring to. Not this one. Man, no. Apostate Prophet asks, why were infidels constantly persecuted by Muslims? I don't know what persecution you're talking about. You can watch my debate with David Wood on this question about Muslims persecuting. Why are liberals constantly persecuting Muslims? That's a question you should answer, Apostate Prophet. I mean, you tried to answer it in our debate, but I don't know if you have a better response than what you gave before. Daniel, what's your favorite food? I just love all kinds of Muslim foods, but I really like desi food. I love Indian food, and just food from the subcontinent is my favorite. It's the best. So foods like biryani, nihari, halim. I love halim a lot. Naan, these are my favorite foods. But I like, if you look at the foods of Iran, it's almost pretty much the same kinds of food in Iran. In Turkey also, there's a lot of similarity. Turkish food, Arab food, but the spice profiles are different. You have different spices, you have different cooking methods. So I love all of them, alhamdulillah, as long as it's halal food. But the desi food is just like one step above. I like the spicy kind of food, and it's just, mashallah, very huge blessing from Allah, these kinds of foods. Is it okay for me to want to marry only virgin women as a Muslim man? Yes, it is perfectly okay. Especially if you're a virgin yourself, then it's very okay. Don't let anyone shame you for that. That's perfectly within your right to want to marry a virgin, in the same way that it's perfectly legitimate for a woman to want to marry a man who makes a certain amount of income. Like, it's legitimate to have that kind of standard. Daniel, why most serial killers like porn? Is there any connection with Vaush? I don't know if you're implying that he's a serial killer. I don't think he is. And I don't know about the predilections of serial killers. But it wouldn't be surprising to me if they were porn obsessed. Oh, the super chat. Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. I'm glad that there's a true unapologetic voice in all this liberal madness. You're the Chad. And the Ummah keep smashing hypocrites. Jazakallah khairan for the super chat. Appreciate that. Yay. So, brothers, please don't make fun of people's faces. So, this is, everyone's a creation of Allah. So, if you're making fun of someone's face, then this is also an insult. This is not good to make fun of people's faces. If you want to criticize someone or critique them, criticize their arguments, criticize their intelligence or lack thereof, criticize their character or their behavior. But the person's face, they can't control that. They can't control their face or the way that they look. So try not to make that kind of criticism, no matter how hated a person is. I don't think it's legitimate to make fun of their looks. Daniel, have you tried Malaysian or Indonesian food? Actually, I don't think I have, but I want to. Everyone says it's really delicious. So I definitely want to try Malaysian food. There's just nowhere to get it where I live, or I'm not aware of any Malaysian or Indonesian restaurants that will cook this cuisine, but I'm sure I've heard that it's very good. Is there any moderator in the chat? Like, there's a lot of spam in the chat. Jazakallah khair for the super chat. Thoughts on incels giving up on women? Like MGTOW. I don't think that you can give up on women entirely. Like, you should always try. You should always try to, get married if you have the desire to do so. Some people don't have desire, but for those who have desire, they should never give up, even though it's like clear they're suffering from oppression, like from society, from liberalism. They're being persecuted by the liberal system, but they should still try their best. Ask Khaled to make some Malay food. Okay, I'll ask her. She's watching now, I think, so maybe she might actually be doing something else with the kids. What has physics at university taught you? Like, has it strengthened your iman? Thanks. Plus, the main character in the Disney film Lightyear looks a lot like you. Okay, I guess that's a compliment. But isn't this movie the one that was banned from many Muslim countries because of LGBT content? So that's not good. I'm associated with that, but I haven't seen it or anything. But I know Buzz Lightyear, so I didn't know that he looked like me. What has physics taught me? It didn't. Physics didn't really strengthen my iman. Physics it's a very interesting abstract field, and it raises a lot of interesting and important questions that I used to do a lot of research in when I was in school, but I don't think that it didn't increase my iman. it just I got into what I realized when studying physics is that there are a lot of questions that physics doesn't answer, and you need like more philosophy to answer those questions. But philosophy is, yeah, philosophy of science. Like that's where you can address some of these questions, or metaphysics. So that's where in university I went and studied philosophy. But then in philosophy, you realize there's a lot of questions that philosophy can't answer. So ultimately, you go back to Islam. You go back to the creator. You realize how little the human mind is capable of understanding, and how little the human mind is able to conceptualize. And you hit the limit of what you yourself personally can understand. That's a lesson that I think everyone needs to really ingrain, like, and make sure you've ingrained this idea that your mind is limited, your ability to understand is limited, and sometimes even when there is an answer, you're just not able to understand it. You're just not able to conceptualize it. And that's why you need guidance. You need those who know more to guide you. Did you read Nature magazine article about masturbation and prostate cancer? I assume you're referring to the, like, some kind of research that shows that masturbation reduces the chance of prostate cancer. Um, yeah, this is not an argument for masturbation. This is an argument for ejaculation. Like, regular ejaculation will reduce certain cancer. Maybe. I haven't read the research, but that's possible. But then just get married. Get married, and the fact that people aren't getting married and they are alone by themselves, that's what's creating a situation where they're dependent on masturbation. So the solution, marriage reduces. Why don't we see an article in Nature that marriage reduces prostate cancer? That doesn't serve their liberal agenda, so that's not what they say. Jazakallah khair for your super chat. Have you tried goat paya? It's really good. I don't know what that is. Also, as the best way to find a second wife in the US, asking for a friend. I don't know. I haven't tried to find a second wife, so I don't know what's the best way. But there are, from people that I know who have tried to get a second wife, it's really hard. Oh, I also should say that it's illegal. So it is illegal to marry a second wife in the US. So I'm not going to advocate anything that is against the law. So just keep that in mind. But for someone who wants to do that, there are apps now. There are even apps, apparently, that you can use. So, but I don't recommend it. I don't advocate anyone violate the law. Check your local laws before you do anything like follow the Sunnah and practice Islam. Jazakallah khair for the super chat. Feel free to come to the UK, inshallah, low key, and I'll cook some nice Bengali styled kacha biryani on the house. Barakallahu fikum. That's very generous invitation. I would love any kind of biryani. There was one claim that I read that biryani actually originated in Iran, in Persia. So I know, and biryani itself, the word is a Persian word. So I don't know if there's any basis to that. But as far as who makes the best biryani in this day and age, it's definitely the Muslims in the subcontinent. Whether it's chicken biryani, goat biryani is delicious, lamb biryani, all very good. Chicken tikka is also very good. Man, you guys must be really hungry. We're just talking about food. Do I speak Persian? Yes, I do. It's like I speak Farsi. Daniel, how old are you? I'm 36. Yes, biryani is a Central Asian word and food and was brought to the subcontinent by the Mughals, who are ethnically Turco-Persian Central Asian. Yeah, so that's the history of biryani. But they don't, the word biryani, like, that's not considered an Iranian dish, like, by modern Iranians. Modern Persians don't have, they have food that is similar to biryani. Like, if you're Persian, you know of like kalam polo. Kalam is like cabbage rice, but it has like meat in it as well. So these kinds of things are similar to biryani, but I love kalam polo actually, especially if it's with ground beef. But if I had the choice of a nice plate of biryani or a nice plate of kalam polo, I think biryani I'd prefer a little bit more. When is the analysis going to start? Inshallah soon. Inshallah soon we'll start. First we have to talk about biryani. What do you know about Zoroastrianism? Isn't it also monotheistic? No, it's actually not monotheistic. It's like they have two gods, two all-powerful gods. So it's not monotheistic. I also know that, like, again, if you go onto muslimskeptic.com, we have a bunch of articles on Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism. Here's the yeah, so at least 4 articles dedicated to the topic. So check out muslimskeptic.com. It's an important resource, inshallah. Hi, Daniel, Indonesian Buddhist here. I want to learn more about Islam. Do you have a reading list other than the one on the website, since the list focuses on Western philosophy? Yeah, a reading list for learning about Islam. That's a good question. I don't have a reading list offhand, but I'm sure, let's see. There was one book that we taught for a new Muslims class, like basically people who had just become Muslim and they wanted to learn about Islam. And we taught it in the mosque to these new Muslims, and it was a really good book. It was comprehensive, and let me just get the title of it. Like what Islam is all about. By Yahya Emmerich. So this book is very comprehensive. And if I can just share this. Hold on. What Islam is all about by Yahya Emmerich. It's like a textbook kind of, but it's very engaging to read. And it gives you like all of the basics of Islam and explains things. So that is a good like introduction, I think. Like it covers a lot, like the biography of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, covers the basic pillars of belief of Islam. Um, it's pretty comprehensive, and it's written for a non-Muslim audience. So that's what I recommend to start with. But if you want like a full reading list, let me think about it, and I'll post something. Inshallah. I'm gonna make a note to post something about it on the channel, on like the community posts. Okay, thanks for your question. Let me make a note. I'll also consult like the Muslim Skeptic team, and we'll come up with a really good list, and we'll add it to the site, inshallah. Any good arguments against democracy and good arguments for Khilafah? So if you want to argue, it depends on who you're arguing against. If you're arguing against non-Muslims, if you search on Muslim Skeptic channel, there's a lot of videos on democracy and secularism, or you can even search muslimskeptic.com. If you're debating or arguing with Muslims, then I wrote an article recently on Muslim Skeptic. I think I titled it "The Logic of Khilafah." I'll pull that up. Logical necessity of the caliphate. Just look that up on Muslim Skeptic. And that'll provide you a good argument, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, brothers, for the super chat. Sultanov. Okay, no problem, brother. Why can't I bring this on the screen? Oh, here. Jazakallah khair, Akhi, I didn't mean to offend you. The reality is Muslims want Khilafah, and under one, the liberal ideology would be easy to deconstruct. It won't disappear itself. The question is, how do we work for it? Yeah, you work for it by advocating for it, by deconstructing liberalism and secularism. And the reality actually is that a lot of Muslims do not want Khilafah because they have been liberalized. They've been secularized. They want like this kind of liberal democracy because they think Khilafah is this totalitarian dictatorship system. So you have to educate people. If you're educating people, that is part of working towards Khilafah. There's a super chat, Jazakallah khair, from Mr. Adyan. Are you open to open dialogue with Jordan Peterson or Michaela Peterson? Yeah, I'm open to dialogue with anyone. Assalamu alaikum. I'm a student of Sheikh Uthman Al Khamis from Kuwait. I want to ask if you've heard of him and would it be possible to get in touch with you at all? Jazakallah khair for everything you do. Yeah, of course, no problem. I know of Sheikh Uthman, mashallah, so no problem. Just message me or email me. You can also go to the contact portion of muslimskeptic.com on the About tab, and that's where my contact is, to the admin of the site, and they'll forward the message, inshallah. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that when we cannot afford marriage, we should observe fast, for it is a means of controlling the sexual desire. Absolutely true. Fasting will help cut the desire. How do you feel about doing street dawah? Do you believe it's beneficial? Yes, I think it is beneficial way to do dawah. Let's see, where is this? Did YouTube respond to your MGAP episode 2 complaint? No, they did not. YouTube did not respond. So it's really fishy that YouTube would age restrict that video. It could have been like the French government requesting that it be censored completely. So I think there's something fishy about that age restriction on MGAP episode 2. If you haven't seen episode 2 of MGAP, the Muslim Genocide Awareness Project on Algeria, please check that out. Share it with as many people as possible. We spent a lot of time on that video documenting part of the genocide of Algerian Muslims by the French, by the liberal, secular French. And of course, YouTube doesn't want you to know about the genocide of Muslims if it's liberals who caused it. Would be great. Assalamu alaikum. Would be great if you post a comprehensive video series on issues that Muslims face and the ones you debate on. Alaikum salam. Yeah, it takes time to create these video series. So trying to do the best, putting stuff on YouTube, putting stuff on muslimskeptic.com, and putting stuff on Alesna Institute. What is wife school, bra? Wife school is a new Alesna course on basically how to have a happy marriage. And it's mainly targeting Muslim women, but Muslim men can also attend. It's taught by Khalid. It's a course that's going to start in about a week, inshallah. So if you are interested in, how to create a traditional Muslim marriage, then I highly recommend taking this course. Just go to alesna.org and you can register for it there. There's also a free preview. If you're not sure you want to take it, you can take the free preview that will go live October 14th, inshallah, through the platform. So a lot of courses are focused on fiqh, which is important, like what is the halal and haram of marriage. But the courses that give practical advice on how to be a good wife or how to be a good husband and how to have a good marriage, many of these courses being offered by Muslims are heavily indoctrinated with feminism. They are basically spreading feminism through their counseling and their teaching. So we wanted to address this. Alesna wants to address this by having a course that is going to strip out all of the feminist garbage and the poison that is being put into the minds of the Muslim community, and actually teach, what is a successful marriage, how do you achieve a successful marriage, and what is needed for that. But what they'll teach you in some of these Muslim courses online, or what some of these feminist counselors, and they're wearing hijab and they're a sheikha, all they're teaching you is pure feminism, pure garbage. So we want to really provide a resource that will cut through that garbage. Daniel, you should make a Rumble account if you haven't already. YouTube is really strict and picky these days. Yeah, I just recently created one. So you can check it out on Rumble. But Odyssey also. Odyssey, we have a mirror channel. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Wa alaikum salam. I appreciate your work. I saw your recent short of hijab mandating. Is hijab mandating Quran and Sunnah? As I heard from Dr. Shabir Ali, that isn't. Dr. Shabir Ali is a deviant. Stop watching his stuff. He has gone against Islam, clear-cut rulings within Islam many times, and he has all kinds of deviant views. And there's a video on Muslim Skeptic. Just search the channel for Shabir Ali, and you can get some resources on all the bizarre views that he has. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a pure liberal. Just because he wears a topi and has a long beard, that doesn't mean he is a Muslim that you should trust or a scholar by any means. So Shabir Ali is a deviant. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Yes, mandating hijab is part of Islam. And I'm going to post actually later today on Telegram. Go to Telegram. I might post also on Facebook and YouTube about this issue. But yes, it's always been mandated. Hijab has always been mandated in Muslim societies. And it wasn't necessarily the government. The government would enforce it, but the government wouldn't need to, because it was part of appropriate dress that everyone knew. Women had shame. Women had decency. They weren't, like the liberalized women of today. MGAP episode 2 is one of my favorite videos by Muslim Skeptic. I even made notes while watching it. Jazakallah khair. I'm very glad to hear that. Mufti Cheesecake makes a good point. What does not being able to afford marriage really mean? We have hadith of companions getting married when they had nothing but the cloth to cover themselves. Do we really have an excuse? Yeah, I mean, if you are living and able to afford an apartment, unless you're like homeless, you should be able to afford marriage. Like, marriage is not that expensive. It's only expensive because of certain standards or social conventions that have been added to it. So if you're living in an apartment, you can afford that. Like, why can't your wife will live with you? Because what you are obligated to provide for your wife is a roof over her head, clothes for her to wear, and food for her to eat. That's all that you're required to provide. So why can't you live with your wife happily? You love her, she loves you, you take care of each other. What's the problem? Sonny Corleone. Hey, Daniel, I'm going to go knights as Franks. If you can pick up Vietnamese and go archers, then we can do 2v2 in Arabia. Age of Empires reference. Daniel, do you need help with making the documentaries? Maybe you could post what we could help with on your website. I mean, the most that help is just to help fund it, because to do a professional job, you need to have, a paid editor, video editor, and and sometimes the project takes months. So, and many, many hours. So any kind of funding that you provide through, the contributions page, that will help. That's like the biggest thing. And if we had more money, if we had more funding, we can hire more video editors who can, produce more documentaries. Like that's the big bottleneck, is the number of video editors that we have. They only have a limited amount of time in a day to produce material. So people underestimate how much time and effort it takes to produce these documentaries when they're like professional quality. When we bring back the roundtable live streams, we missed the other brothers. Inshallah. Let me talk to the brothers and see when they want to come back. Plan to write another book besides The Monetarist Menace? Yeah, inshallah. I would like to write more books, so we'll see. In the era of enhanced state control and censoring and brainwashing through schools, should we consider state efforts to secularize Muslim youth a war against Islam? Yeah, the secularists are explicit that they are trying to erase Islam and they want to control Muslims. So if they're saying it's a war, then we'll take their word for it. Daniel, reading your book, Modernist Mess to Islam, really beneficial. Alhamdulillah, glad you enjoy it. For wife school, is there any kind of info about what will be taught to the sisters, like a preview? Yeah, there will be a free preview on the 14th, Friday. Not this Friday, next Friday, inshallah. So it's topics like the rights and duties of wives and husbands, topics like personality, how to really behave with your husband, how to really get past some of these feminist ideas that are poisoning Muslim women's minds against marriage and against their husbands. A lot of the course is really dedicated to that. Like it's going to talk about the nature of feminism. So Khalid has basically informally counseled, countless sisters on the topic of marriage over the years. So now she's just putting all of that in an organized course so that more and more people can benefit, inshallah. Fareed Responds has a vid on his channel exposing Shabir Ali's deviance. Yeah, check out Fareed Responds. He also has a video. Oh yeah, you'll be very happy to know, Walaikum Assalam, making more episodes of Genius of Islam. Yes, I'm busy working on that these days. Episode 4. Daniel, can you elaborate on what it means to mandate the hijab? As far as I know, it's only the ruler that can enforce it and not the people, because there's no compulsion in Islam. I'm genuinely confused. Yeah, that's what mandating means. Like the ruler is enforcing the hijab. So, la ikraha fi din, there's no compulsion in religion. This is misused. Like, it's misused by liberals to basically any aspect of Islam that's not liberal. They say la ikraha fi din. But if you said that, well, la ikraha fi din, so we can't really punish murderers, we can't really punish thieves, we can't really, we can't punish the man who abuses his wife. If a man abuses his wife, and then we want to stop him, or the government wants to stop him from abusing his wife, and then the man says, whoa, 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 la ikraha fi din. You can't stop me. Like, there's no compulsion in Islam. Don't keep your ideas of what is abuse to yourself. I don't consider myself to be abusive. Would we accept that kind of argument? Basically, la ikraha fi din, if you applied it, in its totality, it basically means you can't have laws. You can't have laws about anything, because laws are compulsory. All laws are mandated. You have to abide by them, whether you like to or not, whether you agree with the law or not. So la ikraha fi din is used by liberal Muslims to nullify all aspects of Islam that are contrary to liberalism and the separation of church and state. So this is a trick. Like, don't fall for it. Yes, in Islam, proper dress in public is mandated. The ruler is the one who enforces it in a Muslim society, but people as well. People in society. The husband enforces it on his wife. The father enforces it on his daughter. The male family members enforce it. Like, they enforce it, meaning if it's violated, then those male family members have the authority to force it. But for a variety of reasons, liberal states have prevented this, and they said, no, you can't. Men cannot tell women how to dress. Even if you're a father, you cannot tell your daughter how to dress. If you are a husband, you cannot tell your wife how to dress. That's controlling, abusive behavior. She can dress like a prostitute if she wants, no problem. This is what freedom of choice means. But in Islamic societies, according to Islamic law, this is nonsense. Of course, the father, the husband, other men in society, other women in society. And if you look at the Sahaba, they actually did practice this. Like, if there was any kind of inappropriate dress or inappropriate interaction in public, they would, some of women were deputized actually to carry like a whip and like whip those who were violating these kinds of standards, whip other women. Like the morality police, quote unquote, those existed from the time of the Salaf. So people are just so secularized and brainwashed that this kind of history of Muslim societies, just 2 generations ago, they've forgotten all of that. Okay, guys. I'm a recent revert. Please pray for me. May Allah bless you, brother, and make things easy for you. Ameen. We'll make dua for you. But don't we just advise people who are not wearing hijab or praying 5 times a day? How do you enforce people to wear hijab or not praying? Yeah, so not everything can be enforced, but hijab is something public, like you go out and it's clothes that you wear. So, like, how would a father in a Muslim society, according to Islamic law, how does a father or a husband enforce this? Well, think about the example of a husband. The husband says that, look, you are dressed like this. This is wrong. And if you continue to dress like this, I will divorce you. And that's a big deal. Like, that's to be divorced in a Muslim society, because you are, as a divorced woman, it's going to be hard for you to remarry. Your whole life is going to be flipped upside down, basically. The thing about liberal societies and the basically the welfare state is that women can live very comfortable lives without a husband. They can basically, all of the benefits that come from marriage, the secular state provides for women. So women want to have kids. Well, there's artificial insemination. You can have artificial fertility to have a child without being married. If husbands provide protection for women. Secular society provides protection. You have a police force. You have, all kinds of surveillance to protect women from being attacked. How about companionship? Their husbands provide companionship that is provided by the secular state through, social media or through all kinds of antidepressants, drugs, so that if you're depressed because you're not married, that you don't have a husband who loves you and takes care of you, you can just take antidepressants. So basically, everything that a husband provides for women, that would usually be like exclusively coming from the husband, now is provided by secular welfare state. So the husband has become obsolete. So this idea of coercion no longer works. And that's like the explicit program of feminism. Feminism wants to make women as independent from men as possible. Feminism wants it so that women can live completely independent of men. And that's why we see many women do live completely independent of men. They live very sad lives, but this is the situation that the welfare state creates. But in the past, or within Islamic societies, legitimate Islamic societies, this would be a big problem. If a husband says, I'm going to divorce you, or I'm going to just go marry a second wife who is properly going to abide by the hijab, and I'm not going to have children with you because you are committing something like very wrong and evil, then that is coercion. She has to change her behavior. And then there's also society overall. How does society overall coerce behavior? Well, society will shame such a woman. They will shame her. They will make fun of her, or speak about her like, look at this person who has loose morals. All of that happens, within a proper society. That's what Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi Anil Munkar means. Maybe a woman will, smack her upside the head. Like an old woman within a Muslim society, she sees something wrong, she'll just smack the person. Like, this is all coercion. This is social influence and control to coerce the proper behavior. And that kind of social shame and coercion works in liberal societies as well. Like, it's used in liberal societies as well, but it's used to promote liberal values instead of Islamic values or Christian values. So there's nothing unique about Islam in using coercion and shame and social norms. There's nothing unusual or unique about Islam compared to liberalism or Christianity, etc. But the way that liberalism indoctrinates Muslims is to say that, well, these aspects of Islam, like hijab, they can never be enforced and you can never shame anyone about it. But when it comes to, like, I don't know, being sex positive, then that's something good. We have to, anyone who tries to say anything to a woman, that's harassment, that's shaming, that's slut shaming. We're going to put you in prison, or we're going to fire you from your job, or we're going to cancel you and deplatform you, and on and on. So shaming is okay if it's for a liberal cause, but not if it's for Islamic values. Is there capital punishment in Islam for doing sihr? Yes. Jazakallah khair for the super chat. What do I think of the debate? Just rewind to the first part. So there was a question that I missed. Did the Prophet ﷺ shame anyone to help them change? So, yeah, the Prophet ﷺ did shame. One example, after Khaybar, he beat a Sahabi for drinking with his shoe. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So to hit someone with your shoe, that's a shaming thing. Like, it doesn't necessarily hurt, but for a shoe to be used. So the Prophet ﷺ did that. This was someone who was drinking alcohol. So that's an example. But there's many examples from the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba. What other example? Yeah, of course, shaming is, shaming is part of Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar. When someone openly does something wrong, then yes, you should shame them. And this is a statement that is from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. إذا لم تستحي فافعل ما شئت, or فاصنع ما شئت, which means, if you have no shame, then do as you wish. So shame is important, and part of having shame is you have shame before Allah, and you have shame before your family, and you have shame before society. If you take out shame and you have this kind of society where everyone is supposed to look the other way and everyone just minds their own business, then you create a situation where there is no shame. Then society as a whole will descend into immorality. So people like these compassionate imams that are constantly preaching, don't judge, and have husn al-dhan. Yeah, husn al-dhan for something that you don't know or you can't see. But if someone is publicly doing munkar and advocating munkar, there's no husn al-dhan. Dhan means to speculate. It means you don't know something, yaqinan, like you don't know something with certainty. But if you see something in front of you, then that's certainty. You're certain that this person is doing something that's munkar. So you can change that with your hands or your tongue, or you hate it in your heart, and that's the weakest of iman. So obviously the liberal state has all of these laws which restrict our ability to do amr bil ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar. So that's part of the secularization process. Have you personally spoken with any of these compassionate imams? Yep. Spoken to them at length. How should we deal with atheists who make assumptions with zero evidence for and against them? You don't need to deal with them, just ignore them. I don't know some of these questions. Will you ever debate Twitch streamer Hassan Abi? He's a political streamer that lives in a mansion preaching socialistic ideas and has supported Iran hijab burning. Yeah, I'd love to debate him on any issue, including hijab. Here's another example. The Prophet ﷺ told a man who came to him and said if the Prophet could make zina halal. The Prophet ﷺ shamed him by asking if he'd like that for his mother and sister. Sajid Lippam made a video against you. He took your words out of context and insinuated that you are a deviant. In your response to this, well, if Sajid made a video, then he must have a point. So I trust what Sajid says about it. We love brother Sajid, mashallah. I'm a revert from England. Thank you for speaking the truth about Islam and not lies to make some people temporarily happy. Jazakallah khaira. Thank you so much for your comment. May Allah bless you. Daniel, was there any kind of Muslim elite society at Harvard? We had a MSA, like Islamic Society. Oh. All right, guys, it's 2.5 hours, so that's longer than I wanted to stream now, to keep it to just 2 hours. So what are your thoughts on Putin's speech? I have a whole article on that on Muslim Skeptic. There's no such video by Sajid Lippam. The brother has a misunderstanding. Yeah, maybe that guy was just trolling. Trying to create fitna and as if like that kind of, that'll work. Okay. So, Jazakallah khair. Thank you, everyone, for your attention and for the super chats. Inshallah, there's going to be more Muslim skeptic content on the way. Like I said, we're very busy trying to put together professional videos with a lot of good content, a lot of interesting new info. So stay tuned for that. Also, check out MuslimSkeptic.com. We're trying to put a lot of new information and content on the website every day, new articles daily. So make it a habit to go to MuslimSkeptic.com. There are a lot of news outlets out there, and they do not promote any kind of Islamic position or view. And we're trying to change that. We want Muslim Skeptic to be a competitor for the mainstream news. That is a big challenge because some of these mainstream news sites, they have millions of visits per week. So we're not at that level yet. But inshallah, if we continue and you continue to support our efforts, we can actually compete with some of the bigger online news outlets. And it'll be a source for Muslims and non-Muslims to get unbiased, correct information about Islam, about Muslims, about politics in the world today. So support Muslim Skeptic by just visiting the website on a daily basis. And you can also support it financially, and that will go towards hiring more writers, hiring more video editors, and improving the site, improving the quality of the site. Also, at Esna Institute, if you enjoy these kinds of live streams, we have live streams on a weekly basis on Al Esna, our halaqas, and the students join. We have conversations. It's a lot of fun and hopefully beneficial. So may Allah bless all of you. I appreciate everything, all of your support, and we will see what is the next debate. Inshallah, there's something in the pipeline right now, which I think will be very good, bi'ithnillah. So see you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.